Welcome into the locker room. We'll get you ready for another week of college football and prepare you for round 2 of the high school playoffs. So stay with us inside the locker room. And welcome into the locker room with Gerhard Mathigani. I'm Chase Robinson. We'll start off like always with college football, and let's start with the Alabama Crimson Tide this past Saturday in a scoreless game through 3 against LSU.
Yeah, this was interesting because we knew that this would be a closer game than the ones they had played before. When people look back at what some of the experts said earlier, is that gauntlet with Texas A&M and Tennessee and not Mississippi State, but Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. Which would be those games that Alabama might fall? And one of the games they looked at was after that game was the LSU game, and according to the point spreads, it looked like it was going to be the closer game of it. But Alabama was able to kind of grind. But the thing is that defense is just, it's so hard to score on them. And so when Alabama has the kind of pressure that they've put on teams all year long, it just makes it difficult for opponents. And so the Crimson Tide got away with a big one in Baton Rouge and did it in shutout fashion, which very, very few teams do.
Before we move on to this week against Mississippi State, what does this say about LSU and the progression for them this season under Coach Orgeron?
I was really impressed because they set a lot of offensive records when he first got on board, whenever they first fired Les Miles. But then you could tell that they still have that really, really solid defense. And the thing is that you can't really gauge your defense based on Alabama's offense right now, especially on the road, mainly because Alabama doesn't have, and they've been injured a little bit as well, but they don't have that same kind of offense that they had maybe a few years ago when they had A.J. McCarron and then they had Blake Sims. Jalen Hurts has been fantastic, and they've averaged a lot of points and a lot of yards, but I think that this offense is still maturing. But to see LSU hang with Alabama for as long as they did, I think that it shows signs of them improving. I don't necessarily believe in moral victories, but LSU got what's equivalent to that at home Saturday night.
Well, coming up this week for the Crimson Tide is the Mississippi State Bulldogs, who have not had a great season so far here in 2016. What's Alabama got to do to keep the train rolling here?
Well, one of the good things is that they beat Texas A&M, so they kind of have everybody's eyebrows open, but I think that actually works against them now because now you have Alabama's full attention, and you don't want to be that team that loses to the inferior team. It would be different if Mississippi State was the same state team of a couple of years ago when they were number 1 in the first committee playoff poll. But they've had an up and down year. It's been really rocky, and then they came out and stunned Texas A&M and injured their quarterback in Trevor Knight. So I think that Alabama now has their full attention on them, and there's a reason why the point spread is 29 points in that game.
Well, here's Coach Nick Saban as they prepare for Mississippi State this week.
The quarterback has done a really good job for him all year long. He's kind of the center of what they do in terms of how much he runs the ball and his effectiveness as a runner, as well as being a very effective passer. They've been able to run the ball effectively, and defensively they create a lot of issues and problems in terms of negative plays and how aggressive they are, and they're very well coached and a good special teams. You know, Dan has done a great job there for, a lot of years, and we've always had some really difficult games, and that will be our expectation in this game.
That Alabama-Mississippi State game kicks off 11 a.m. Saturday on ESPN. Next up, the Auburn Tigers, a close win this Saturday against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Auburn really came away with a win despite a lot of shooting themselves in the foot in the football game, and give a lot of credit to Vanderbilt. We knew their defense was solid going into it, but they made Auburn make the change from JF3 to Sean White, and then obviously the injury with Cameron Petway. We'll see how that plays itself out as Auburn goes into his next game. But in my opinion, this was a lot of Vandy, but at the same time, you have to see how Auburn deals with success. They came in as a top 10 team, and so are you able to come in and put teams away? They showed the other day that they weren't necessarily able to, but one of the good things is that Vanderbilt is a good test, and so it's not like it's Arkansas State. They got a good test out of an SEC team that has really played well this season and played in a lot of close games really all year long.
We saw John Franklin III, of course, start. Sean White came in the second half. What is your thoughts on JF3 starting and him there in the first half?
Well, I think they were really trying to get JF3 a lot of meaningful snaps, and I think they thought, the coaching staff that is, that he was further along in the offense than he actually really was. But we could tell that whenever Vanderbilt keyed in on the run, which is basically all he did, they couldn't run on Vanderbilt, and you really couldn't run on Vanderbilt anyways, even without a one kind of back system that they were running down there. And they were definitely not going to run him if you don't think that he has any ability to throw the football. And so I think that Auburn thought JF3 was a little bit more mature in the system, and he's not. He needs to grow a little bit more. So it was big that Sean White came in and really saved the day.
Georgia this week for the Auburn Tigers, one of the biggest rivalries in college football. What's your thoughts on that?
2005 is the last time Auburn went to Athens and won. This is a difficult place to play. And last time they went down there, they lost by 3 touchdowns. And so it'll be hard. It'll be difficult. Auburn is a better football team than Georgia is as we stand right now. Play this game maybe 3-4 weeks ago, it's probably a different story. But seeing as to how this game really puts the exclamation point on what would be a huge Iron Bowl for the SEC West, I think that this will kind of wake up Auburn in the same way that Mississippi State's win over Texas A&M will wake up Alabama for this upcoming game. I think the same thing kind of plays out in the Georgia game.
Well, here is Coach Gus Malzahn as they prepare for Georgia.
Big week, one of our rivals playing at their place. We hadn't had a lot of success over there as of late, and we got to solve that. They're a very talented team. They're always talented, and they play well at home. So we've got to play well. Our guys understand that, and our guys will be ready to go.
You can see that Auburn-Georgia game, 2:30 on CBS. Now, JSU pulled another victory out this weekend on the road, 17-10, I believe.
Yeah, the defense was really the calling card for Jacksonville State, and it has been for 2 of the last 3 weeks and really for a large part of the season. Not necessarily the offense isn't getting yards. They're just not getting into the end zone as much as they want to. And thankfully that defense came through really, really big. And I really like the way this D is playing. #1 defense in America. And we saw the reason why the committee, the FCS committee, put JSU #1.
On the road again this week at Murray State for JSU.
Yeah, and it's a team that likes to throw the football around. So they'll have, maybe 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60 passing attempts in this game. If JSU secondary played the way they did against Eastern Kentucky and they get 5 interceptions overall, 3 for touchdowns, if they can have another big day like this, JSU can run away with this one. But this is another situation for Jacksonville State, a tough game in conference, but a very, very winnable game, and see how far they advance.
Well, here's Coach John Gross this week as they prepare for Murray State.
It's not a new coach, so we know what to expect. We've seen them for the last several years, and they're really good at what they do. But I mean, there's no hidden secrets there. We know what they do, and our guys, our DBs, I think, look forward to playing this game because it's a challenge for them. It's kind of like a receiver going in the game. Hey, coach, we're going to throw it 40 times. The other team's going to throw it 40, 50 times. I mean, DBs are they're excited about playing in this game. But Katie's their offense is potent and it's hard to defend. So we got a good job of getting pressure on him and containing him. He does a really good job, I think, scrambling, extending plays and keeping his eyes downfield and making throws on scramble plays. So, I mean, we got our work cut out for it.
JSU goes on the road to Murray State. That game is Saturday at 1 p.m. We're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, we'll talk some high school football. Stay with us inside the locker room. Back inside the locker room, and now it's time to talk some high school football. It's round 2 of the high school playoffs. Hard to believe it, but we got Colbert County at Piedmont as our game of the week this week.
A rematch of the semifinal game last year. The winner of this game last year punched their ticket to the Super 7, and obviously Piedmont went to the Super 7 and beat Bayside Academy by 44 points. So in a lot of ways, this last year was the state championship game in Class 3A football. I think that this year, Piedmont's just playing on a different level. Colbert County is good. They entered this game 9-2. Their only 2 losses are to Sheffield and to Lauderdale County. But I think that the way Piedmont has been rolling really so far throughout the season, and the way that they've beat their non-region opponents, whether it's Leeds or Aniana, and Cherokee County, they've had great tests all year long. I just expect them to come away with another big victory at home this weekend.
The thing I love about this game is just the marquee value of it. Old heads like me remember back in the 70s when Colbert County was a dominant name in high school football, and teams feared having to go to Leeton and play at Colbert County. And
Right.
now Piedmont's kind of the modern version of that. Colbert County is still a big name, but Piedmont, I think, is the modern day version of that. I'm sure that this is a game Colbert County's not really looking forward to.
Right.
We'll have the highlights from that one and all the other local games coming up 10:30 Friday night right here on the Pigskin Roundup here on TV 24. Let's take a look, though, at the matchups for the second round of the playoffs for our local teams, as we'll start here with Class 1A. We had about 6 local teams in it last year, dwindled down here to 2. Cedar Bluff and Spring Garden still in it in 1A.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup because Cedar Bluff went all the way to the state championship game last year. Obviously lost to Maplesville. This game is pretty big for them at home against Decatur Heritage. One of the biggest things, though, is Spring Garden going on the road and taking on Addison.
And in Class 2A, you see 5 still in it. They'll take on Cleveland, and Sand Rock goes to Tanner. And in Class 3A, Ohatchee, Piedmont, Randolph County, and Weaver all still in it. Gerhard, you made the prediction last week. We could see all 4 of those teams still in it, and they're still going.
And here's another thing, and I don't think this is a bold prediction at all. I think that all 4 teams can win again. One of the biggest things is that Weaver and Randolph County come back home to play. Weaver in a big game against Lexington, and Randolph County in a big game against Sylvania. We obviously talked about the Piedmont game. And Ohatchee going to Lauderdale County, I think that's the toughest game of this group. But I like Coach Scott Martin and his guys going on the road and getting a big win.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Ironically, as good a season as Ohatchee has had, they may have the toughest road to hoe this week.
Well, let's take a look now at Class 4A. Cherokee County is continuing to be impressive. They're still in round 2, and Handley goes to UMS Wright, and Hoax Bluff host North Jackson.
Hoax Bluff, to me, in my opinion, a lot like Randolph County. One of those teams that you probably don't want to play them right now. Coach Mike Robinson and his guys have done a great job all year long. North Jackson, kind of like Mickey was talking about with Colbert County, they have that name. They have that marquee, always perennially deep in the playoffs. And so this is a great matchup for Hoax Bluff at home. And another interesting one is Handley going to UMS Wright, one of the powerhouses in Class 4A.
And next up, Class 5A, Clay Central hosting St. Paul. Etowah goes to Mortimer Jordan, and Lincoln hosts Jackson.
How about Lincoln?
Yeah.
We're still sitting here talking about the Lincoln Golden Bears. That is to me such an amazing story. Very happy for Coach Brad Wallace and the Golden Bears, and I guess we'll see kind of now how good this Etowah team is as they start getting into the meat of the playoffs, because they're a very solid, well-balanced team. Mortimer Jordan, of course, the North champion from last year.
We don't have any local 6A teams still in it, but in Class 7A, Gadsden City goes to Hewitt-Trussville.
I will credit Mickey for this one because he's talked about this for the last couple of weeks. Gadsden City, a team right now that really nobody wants to play, and Gadsden City will go on the road and take on a team that they played in the regular season. Lost 28-14 to Hewitt-Trussville. I was at that football game. Really, it was a couple plays late that really broke it for Hewitt-Trussville. Can Gadsden City stay corrected the way they've corrected their season over the last 4 or 5 games? Can they continue that, correct the mistakes against Hewitt-Trussville, and come away with the win? That's the big question. I think they can.
And the old adage, it's hard to beat someone twice in the same year, and then you throw in the fact that Gadsden City has a lot of momentum. Going to be real interesting to see that score on Friday night.
Yep.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the playoffs. And coming up after this season, something we do here every year, it's the Pigskin Roundup All-Star Banquet. And I know Mickey excited to announce our speaker this season, Kevin Steele.
Yeah, Auburn defensive coordinator Kevin Steele. It's always great when we have a coach from either Alabama or Auburn. We've had Coach Saban, we've had Coach Malzahn in the last few years, so we can't go back there anytime soon. But Kevin Steele is a great name. He's a veteran coach, and he obviously has the Auburn defense back on the map, back playing good football. So, and he's a very articulate coach. He's very interesting to hear when he speaks. I think Auburn fans have kind of found him refreshing in the weekly press conferences because he kind of just tells it like it is and gives out good information to fans. So I think fans will enjoy coming to hear him at this year's banquet.
And another event we have been doing the past few years, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and that is the Holiday Hoops Showcase. And we'll start off the first game of Ohatchee-Asbury, and we end with Mountain Brook Sacred Heart and all kinds of great games in between.
Yeah, this is really, really fun whenever you think about the way these things stack up and the way these games stack up. And then you have a lot of teams who you want to see what they're about. I want to see what Cherokee County's about. They lost they lost their leading scorer from last season, and an Anniston team with a brand new head coach. How will they look? And those are two teams that will battle basically for the same spots coming up in the regionals. Then you have teams like Oxford. How's Joe Van Meter's team look? Talladega, who's always been good, and then of course the four teams at the very bottom of that will cap off the night: Gaston City, Spain Park, Mountain Brook, and Sacred Heart. Those teams are worth the price of admission just by them being on the schedule.
Gerhard mentioned about 4 or 5 games there that really have a lot of marquee value, but I'm going to throw in a word for that Guntersville-Plainsview game, because you talk about two really good regional teams that come to the regional and play at JSU. They were both there last year. Very good basketball programs. Play a lot of good basketball up in those areas. And so I think that's really one of the better games we've got is Guntersville and Plainsview. Should be entertaining.
Well, that is coming up Saturday, December 10th, and all those games you saw will be right here live on TV 24. We're going to grab another timeout. When we come back, we'll have our Pick 6 and more, so stay with us. Back here in the locker room, and it is time to talk some more college football. And guys, I want to get y'all's takeaways from this weekend of college football. I'll start with you, Mickey.
Well, everybody talking about Alabama and LSU, that defensive struggle. Alabama came out of that, as I think all of us thought they would. I think the big surprise the big story to me was, I had Ohio State in my top 4 for a reason.
Yeah.
And they backed me up on Saturday. They look like a real contender again.
Scary. And one of the things that I took away was quarterback play is so important. And a lot of times it's easy to diffuse, or easy to really look kind of back burner the quarterback play when you have running football teams. But Jalen Hurts kind of proved how important it was for Alabama. Got the only score in the football game. Auburn needed Sean White to come back after halftime to get a big win. Trevor Knight goes down. Texas A&M goes down. Nick Fitzgerald for Mississippi State looks incredible in the football game. So quarterback play really kind of determines how each and every game goes really in the SEC and overall, and I think that's a big storyline moving forward.
Last week we showed our top 4. The top 3 stays the same. But if y'all were the committee, who would you have put in the number 4 spot?
I think Washington, and mainly because they are the undefeated team, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable. And Mickey made a great point for Ohio State, and they do look good. But as of right now, the strength of schedule between both those clubs, Ohio State will get a stronger schedule especially when they play Michigan at the end of the season. But as of right now, I would put undefeated Washington up there right now. And then Ohio State, of course, if they beat the Wolverines a little bit later on in the season, I would have put them there.
Well, I obviously wouldn't change anything because I had Ohio State in my top 4. I thought Texas A&M was a paper tiger, and Dan Mullen proved it. Isn't Dan Mullen good for one of those a year? Kind of keeps the charade going in Starkville.
Right.
It looks like they're having a horrible year, maybe a hot seat year, and then he pulls off that. Just kind of keeps it going.
Exactly. And he's also good for a BYU loss in the same vein.
Well, let's take a look now at our Pick 6 for this week, run through some games with our predictions. As we take a look at the standings, we all went 5-1 last week. Mickey and Gerhard tied there, 43-16. Our first game up, Mississippi State at Alabama.
Well, as good as Mississippi State looked last week, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. There's no way they go into Tuscaloosa and even give Alabama a game, so I'm picking the Tide.
Same here. I think that Mississippi State beating Texas A&M woke Alabama up to, hey, and whenever Alabama's on all cylinders, there is not a team that can beat them. Bama wins big.
I got the Crimson Tide in this one. Next up is Auburn. They go on the road to Georgia.
Well, the key here is the injury situation for Auburn. If Auburn has all of their guys out there, even if they're not 100%, I think you saw how big a deal that was on Saturday because Vandy with an open week, a little bit of different offensive philosophy coming into that game. Auburn setting out a lot of guys thinking they were good enough to win that game. We saw that's not the case. If Auburn has all their key guys out there, I think they can win at Georgia. I'm picking the Tigers.
Same here, and a lot of it is really because I think that Georgia, in my opinion, is not there quite yet. And this will be Georgia's big game. This is their Super Bowl. This is the Iron Bowl ruiner for Kirby Smart. And if he wants to usher Nick Saban or help usher Nick Saban into another SEC championship, this is huge for Georgia. But I think Auburn, completely healthy, or even 90% healthy, beats the Bulldogs between the hedges.
I got the Auburn Tigers in this one. Next up, LSU goes on the road to Arkansas.
Well, if I'm LSU, I'm concerned that you put everything into that game last week and you still cannot beat Alabama. Plus, I'm not sure how much more contact Leonard Fournette wants to get before he signs a big contract. So I'm picking the Razorbacks at home. They typically play LSU good anyway.
Yeah, this is always a really fun game to watch between these two clubs, and it's always really interesting and exciting. I think that the air has been taken out of the sails out of LSU as well.
I agree with the both of y'all. I'm going with Arkansas. Next up, Ole Miss at Texas A&M. Both teams missing their starting quarterbacks this week.
Yeah, I think kind of like with LSU, I think Ole Miss, as a lot of people have said, they're as good a multi-loss team. Was it 5 losses? They're so much better than their record. However, I think with Chad Kelly being injured now and with Ole Miss really losing they've only got one key game left, and that's the Egg Bowl. I think Texas A&M will win the game at home.
How great was this game on paper 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that for both teams, the air is kind of been taken out of the sails, and for Texas A&M especially, because not only did you lose last week in Starkville, but you also lost Trevor Knight. And then, as you mentioned, Chase, Ole Miss is down Chad Kelly. I think that Texas A&M will rally in College Station more so and faster than Ole Miss can without Chad Kelly. I like the Aggies.
I got the home team, the Texas A&M Aggies as well. Next up, Baylor at Oklahoma.
I'm going with the Sooners at home in what could be a very high-scoring, fun game to watch.
Yeah, I don't know what the over is, but if it's 200, I'm still going over. None of these teams play any defense, but I like Baker and I like Oklahoma in this one.
I got the Oklahoma Sooners as well. And the last one, South Carolina on the road at Florida.
Well, the Gators got humbled by Arkansas, as we saw last Saturday. I think they rebound this week at home. I'm going with the Gators.
Yeah, same here. I don't think South Carolina is there just yet. I think Will Muschamp and his guys are coming, and we've seen kind of that Mississippi State look to them where they're able to stay close in some of those bigger games. But I like Luke Del Rio. I like Jim McElwain and the Gators in the Swamp.
I'm going with the home team in Florida in this one as well. And, of course, we'll let you know our standings and our
Nothing's going to change.
I was going to say, yeah, we'll have the exact same standings.
We all read the same crystal ball this week.
We'll have all that for you next week coming up on the show. Thanks for joining us on this week's edition of the show. We're going to go out with a video. Brett Holmes, we've been talking about him here on the show for months, racing the ARCA series. He's been racing all over, started out in dirt track here in Talladega. But we have a video to close the show produced by Solomon Shadricks, happens to be Mickey's son. Produced a great video as we're going to roll out today with Brett Holmes Racing.